The faint hum of fluorescent lights echoed down the nearly empty halls of Lincoln Elementary. It was long past the final bell, and only the low, rhythmic squeak of a mop against the waxed tiles kept the silence company. Daniel Harper, wearing a faded navy uniform with a patch that read custodian, leaned into the handle, guiding the mop in practiced arcs. He had done this work for years, a quiet, unnoticed, steady, the kind of work no one clapped for but everyone relied on. Daniel didn't complain. The job paid the bills, gave him enough flexibility to be there for his son, and, in some ways, it kept him grounded. Being a single dad wasn't easy, but he had long since stopped asking life to be fair. From down the hall, a muffled sound interrupted his rhythm. A stifled sob. Daniel froze, listening. The sound grew, quicker breaths, a choked whimper, then the unmistakable spiral of a child breaking down. He dropped the mop, his instincts taking over, and followed the noise. He found the source near the art room. A little boy, no older than 7, crouched by the wall with his knees hugged tight to his chest. His backpack lay discarded beside him, its zipper gaping open with papers spilling out. Tears streaked down his flushed face, and his small fists pressed hard against his ears as though the world was too loud. Daniel's heart clenched. He recognized the look of the panic, the helplessness, the storm a child couldn't explain. He had seen it before in his own son, Oliver, who struggled with anxiety after Daniel's wife passed away. He knew these meltdowns weren't tantrums, they were avalanches. He crouched slowly, lowering himself to the boy's level. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly, keeping his voice steady and calm. "Looks like the day got a little too big for you, huh?" The boy didn't answer, just rocked slightly, tears still streaming. Daniel glanced around. No teachers, no parents, just him. He thought fast. Words weren't enough right now. This boy needed a bridge back to calm. Then, from his pocket, he pulled out a small plastic bottle of bubblers, something he always carried for Oliver, a trick that worked more often than not. He twisted the cap and dipped the wand. With a gentle breath, he released a cluster of shimmering bubbles into the hallway air. They floated like fragile planets, catching the fluorescent light, drifting down around the boy. The sobs slowed. The boy blinked, his gaze following the floating shapes. Another breath from Daniel sent more bubbles spinning, one landing softly on the boy's shoe before bursting. A hitching laugh broke through the boy's tears. Just a small sound, but it was there. Daniel smiled. "That's better. You ever try blowing these? Helps slow your breathing. Wanna give it a shot?" The boy hesitated, then reached for the wand with trembling fingers. Daniel guided him, gently coaching. Deep breath in, nice and slow, then out through the wand. The first attempt popped too quickly, but the second created a perfect bubble that danced upward. The boy giggled, the sound freer this time. His shoulders eased, the storm subsiding. Daniel felt relief wash over him. Moments like these this was why he always carried the bubbles. It wasn't just a toy, it was a lifeline. But he didn't know he wasn't alone. Just a few steps behind him, at the far end of the hall, stood a woman in a sharp charcoal suit and heels that clicked against the floor when she finally moved. Her presence was commanding, but her eyes are usually guarded, calculating as softened as she watched the scene unfold. Victoria Lane, CEO of one of the largest tech firms in the city, had arrived early for a late meeting with the school board. She had been on her phone, halfway through a tense conversation about quarterly projections, when she noticed the commotion. She was used to solving crises in boardrooms, not hallways. Yet here she was, frozen, watching a janitor soothe her son better than any therapist or teacher had managed, because the boy sitting cross-legged now, chasing the next bubble, was her son, Ethan. Her grip on the phone slackened. The voice on the other end asked, "Victoria, are you there?" She ended the call without replying. For once, work could wait. Daniel had no idea. To him, Ethan was just a kid who needed kindness, the same way all kids did sometimes. He ruffled the boy's hair gently. "You did great, champ. Storm's over. You feel a little lighter?" Ethan nodded, a shy smile tugging at his lips. He clutched the bubble wand like treasure. From behind, Victoria finally spoke, her voice low but clear. He hasn't smiled like that in months. Daniel startled, turning quickly. He straightened to his full height, suddenly aware of his scuffed shoes, the worn uniform, the mop leaning against the wall. Standing before him was not just Annie, it was her. He had seen her face on magazine covers, financial news segments, billboards even. The kind of woman who never looked out of place in boardrooms filled with millionaires. And right now, she was looking directly at him. "Mom, you are sorry, I didn't mean to." She raised a hand, silencing him, her eyes still locked on her son. Then, softer than Daniel expected, "Don't apologize." Ethan scrambled up, running to hug her waist. "Mommy." His voice was lighter, steadier now. Victoria crouched to hold him close, brushing his hair back. "I was worried about you, sweetheart." Ethan mumbled against her shoulder. "I was a broken bar, I was too loud." But he helped. He pointed at Daniel, pride flickering in his small voice. "He had bubbles." Victoria followed her son's gaze, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, slowly, she stood. "You're the custodian here, aren't you?" Daniel swallowed, nodding. "Yes, Mom, just doing my job." Her brow furrowed slightly. "That didn't look like a just doing your job to me." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, not sure how to respond. He wasn't looking for praise, he never was. But there was something in her tone, something layered. Respect, maybe curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite name. Before he could answer, Ethan tugged her sleeve. "Can we get bubbles at home, Mommy?" Victoria's lips curved faintly, the smallest hint of a smile breaking through her usual steel composure. Yes, we can." She glanced back at Daniel once more, as if memorizing the sight of him, before guiding Ethan down the hall. Daniel exhaled, shaking his head as he bent to pick up his mop again. Just another night at the school, he thought. He had no idea that the simple act of blowing bubbles had just altered the course of all their lives.